Before we hop into today's conversation with one of the best coaches in the sport of running, I want to tell you a quick note that today's podcast is brought to you by Final Surge. And over the next couple of weeks, we will be documenting and chronicling some of the top coaches in the country across professional, collegiate, and high school sports teams. And we're calling this Final Surge Sessions because whether you're a coach, athlete, or entire team, Final Surge is the one platform built specifically for runners. It lets coaches easily deliver workouts, track results, and analyze progress, all in one clean dashboard. It syncs seamlessly with your GPS watch, Garmin, Coros, Apple Watch, Strava, you name it. No more juggling apps to stay organized. Final Surge brings training plans, messaging, and attendance tracking, super cool, into one simple place, perfect for any high school, college, or professional team. If you're a high school or college coach listening, head to finalsurge.com/schools for discounted pricing, up to 35% off. And then for anyone else listening to this, you can get 20% off your first coaching package with code RunningEffect20, all capital RunningEffect20 at checkout. Smarter training starts with smarter tools, and Final Surge is where that begins. I hope you guys enjoy this conversation with one of the top coaches in the country.
You can't fake wanting to run well for each other. And those teams absolutely, I can't speak for any other team, but I can't imagine any other team wanting to run for each other more than those teams did in those years. And so that helps overcome a lot of adversity.
That was NC State's coach Laurie Henes today on the Running Effect podcast. Coach Henes is one of those individuals who I've always wanted to speak to because of her rich history of excellence and success and winning not only championships, but developing good human beings on and off the track. She's led the NC State women Wolfpack to multiple NCAA team championships on the grass. She's coached people like Caitlin Toohey, Hannah Steelman, Grace Hartman, Angelina Napoleon. The list goes on and on. I literally forgot Ellie Henes, her daughter, who won an NCAA championship. And she herself in 1991 won an NCAA championship in the 5K on the track, if I'm not mistaken. And so today's conversation is this big archive of diving into the wisdom and knowledge that is decades long of Coach Laurie Henes. I love this conversation. If you're a coach or an athlete who's aspiring to greatness, you're going to walk away from this one with a deep, rich understanding of what it takes to succeed. You're going to walk away with actionable takeaways that you can apply directly into your team and their culture and their mindset and their beliefs. I thoroughly enjoy this one. I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I did. And if you do enjoy it, give us a 5-star review. It takes less than 5 seconds. Hit the follow button so you don't miss more conversations with top coaches like Coach Laurie Henes in the future. And the easiest way in which we can grow is sharing the podcast. So if you yourself find value from this episode, my one ask is that you pass it on. Do me a favor, do that. With all of those notes aside, I hope you all enjoy this conversation with one of the greatest coaches in NCAA history, Coach Laurie Henes. Coach Laurie Henes, welcome to the Running Effect podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm amazing. I'm super excited for this. We talked a little bit before hitting the record button about cross country, but when you think of NC State and the Wolfpack, I think your mind immediately goes to cross country. And it's not to say that you guys haven't had success on the track, but feels like cross country is the bread and butter. How nice is it to be back on the grass? Specifically, you just came from the World Championships in Tokyo, having an athlete there. How exciting is it to be back this year?
Yeah, it's been a little different this year, obviously, with having an athlete getting ready for the World, Track and Field Championships in the middle of, bringing everyone back for cross country. So we've kind of been in cross country mode here for a month or so, with a little break for Tokyo. But yeah, it's a long time to have them home in our sport. I think most fall sports in the NCAA bring their athletes back pretty early. I was back in the office and both soccers are back and volleyball's back and football. And all of the fall sports have athletes on campus quite early, but with the way our seasons are and the three times a year that these athletes have to be ready, we don't bring them back early and we want them to stay home as long as possible. So it's really nice to have everyone back together. They really thrive on that. And so it's, nice for me to have everyone back in one place.
You're coaching one big team at the moment, but within the team are so many different characters with so many different backgrounds and needs. And I think too, like Angelina, who just competed at Worlds, and I had an awesome conversation with her about a month ago. And obviously her journey to the NCAA championship meet this November is going to look drastically different from someone who ended their season after ACCs in track versus stud and prodigy Sadie Engelhart, who's just attacking the NCAA for the first time. How do you, in your mind, sit down and figure out, okay, how do we get, the top 7 and the rest of the team on the same page going into November with these wildly different backgrounds?
Yeah, and this year is particularly challenging. U.S. Nationals was so late as well, and so we had not just Angelina, but Grace Hartman was getting ready for that, and then we had Hannah Gapes, who was top 10 in the country last year, have to win the New Zealand championships to make the world cross team. So she had to do that at the beginning of August, and then Sadie coming off of a very late track season for her. So we've got a lot of moving pieces, and I don't think that we'll see where we really are team wise until late October, most likely. I'm fairly conservative in terms of like believing that people really do need some recovery during the year. And so we're going to make sure that those top athletes have some of that right now. Not that they're not training hard. They are training very hard. But we're just not going to race them particularly early. I've always been of the mind that really everything that, certainly you need to get ready for the postseason, but in our sport, what really matters is, conference and after that. And so we're going to aim to have everybody ready by ACCs, maybe a little bit earlier, but hopefully by ACCs.
One of the things I'm always fascinated to ask successful coaches like yourself is the recruiting aspect. And the name you brought up I want to ask you about is Grace Hartman. My backstory with her is I grew up in Ohio. I think we're similar grades. And so I was D1, she was D2, but any meet that we crossed paths about, it was that thing where you'd pass tents and you just hear the same name. Oh, Grace Hartman's here. Grace Hartman's here. And then you'd watch and she would win races by 40 or 50 seconds. Obviously, Ohio, even though it's maybe not a small state, it feels like a small state. So everyone has a lot of pride because we don't generally perform that well at national meets. Our teams normally don't go to NXN, but like the state meet feels like such a big deal. And so I think everyone within the state saw Grace as someone who could ultimately go on to do all the things she's done at NC State. But it was cool to see a program like yourself take a chance on her because she wasn't, winning NXN. Take me through the recruitment process of finding like a hidden gem like Grace who, I think everyone around her circle knew she could do the things she did, but maybe from a big program, Stanford, Oregon, they weren't paying as much attention because a very small school in Ohio and D2.
So it doesn't hurt that I am also from Ohio. My husband is also from Ohio. So, I would say Sam Bush is another example who was very good in high school, but not necessarily killing it on the national scene.
So you get it.
Yeah, I think we've had a lot of that from New York recently as well. So it seems like we've done a lot of like Ohio, New York recently. But I always, coming from Ohio, I remember our outdoor seasons, it would be like freezing rain and sleet until the middle of April and then 95 degrees at the state meet. And for some reason, I still think there's not as many Ohio athletes that go to, especially in track, all the national meets and those types of things. So, one of the things we really look for is someone who has good range. And, Grace was anchoring the 4x8 or running pretty fast at 800 and at 3,200 and cross country. And so that's something that we really, I think the level now in the NCAA, like you better have a good range. And she had that and she won a lot. But honestly, it was just the process of getting to know her through the phone calls where I'm like, I don't think this woman is going to rest until she is great. And you just get that feeling sometimes. And it's concerning to me at times now when I think like, oh, in the current climate, would I have done that? And I still think the answer is yes. I think that there's going to be lots of different ways to build rosters in this current climate. And I've just done this a long time and I enjoy development and being able to, find some of those hidden gems and do that. And I believe that with the right culture, you can still win that way. So that's something we're going to continue to do at NC State is to find, the best high school athletes that we can. Not that we're not going to use the portal or recruit internationally. We do both of those things, but I feel very strongly that I still want to find those athletes like that and offer an opportunity to them to be in a program that's competing for national titles.
What are those characteristics you look for in recruiting and how do you find those things out, whether it's through meetings or going to the races? What does that process look like?
Yeah, a lot of times we go to practices when we're recruiting. Not that we don't do home visits, but Erica Kemp a long time ago that I would say for sure. Erica Kemp never, she's running professionally now, and she ran at the World Championships in the marathon. She never even ran cross country in high school. Her high school counselor called us about her. We went to a practice, and just the attitude she had at practice and the way she approached that was something where I thought, oh, this is someone who would really be a good fit for us. We do. I mean, obviously, track and field is where you make the world teams and the Olympic teams, and we very much focus on track and field. But for the cross country part of it, we do want people who will buy into the team aspect. And that's not for everyone. We are an individual sport, and that's okay if somebody, doesn't think that that's something they want to be a big part of their collegiate career or their experience at this level. But for us, we want to find people who really want to be like doing this for something bigger than themselves and really embrace the idea of, I'm going to be better by being surrounded by these women at a high level, and I want to help bring those people around me to this level. I think that's why we've been so successful team-wise, is that we've been able to find the right people. And so that's something we don't back down from in the recruiting process at all. I mean, again, it's not for everyone, but I think that this is not an easy sport. It's a tough sport. It's kind of like, how much pain can you put yourself in at times? So you have to find people that like really enjoy doing hard things together, that's honestly fun for them. And so that's something we really try to figure out in the recruiting process.
We talked about, maybe finding more of a unique athlete like Grace and how you found her and how you developed her. But then on the opposite end, you have a Caitlin Tui, you have a Sadie Engelhart, you have athletes who are getting offered full rides by anyone in the country because they're doing things that were never seen at the high school level before. How do you particularly stand out in that recruiting process to say, hey, we can build something special here and we can turn you into the athlete you want to become?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's become a little bit easier after winning 3 national titles, but some of that was before we did that. And so I think there's 2 aspects where we really stand out. I think that NC State as a university, we offer a really great balance between having like really high level academics, and our women's team GPA is like a 3.6 or 3.7 right now. They're very good students. So you come out of here with a great degree that's going to help you with whatever you want to do after running, but also you can do that and still have enough time, if you're a good student, to put what you need to put into the athletic side and be able to compete at the level that you want to compete at. So I think that that's a unique balance we have, where we're still, ranked really high, and the academic piece is very important, but you don't, necessarily have to be up till 1 or 2 in the morning trying to get stuff done. As long as you're pretty good with time management, you can still, race it and compete and train at the level you want to while taking care of your academics here. But also I think that we really have just been incredibly fortunate to have people at the beginning of this ride like Kelsey Camille and Caitlin Tui, who were just incredible individually, but the team goals were just as important to them, if not more at times. And so that has drawn, I think, you draw like people in when you have that. So I think when we were able to do that, and starting, 8-10 years ago, maybe, when we really were getting people who really, really wanted to be at the highest level individually, but bring their teammates with them. And then you just kind of attract that type of person because they want to be in that atmosphere. And not that other teams don't have it, but I've done this a long time too. And I think that just where we've been the last, maybe 8 years with that is just something I'd never seen before. Just the way that these women do really run for each other is unique. And so I think that's helped us in the recruiting process.
Obviously that concept of depth and doing it for more than yourself is really important to you. How do you weed out the athletes who might on paper match what you would look for in terms of championship level quality, but they are in it for themselves and they're more focused on personal accolades and, where am I going to fit in the top 7 versus, hey, how can I buy into this program and continue and help you to have a culture of excellence?
Yeah. One of the things I never let people, we do one-on-one sessions at the beginning, and a lot of times people would come in with the goal of, we want to focus on process goals, but everyone's, people can have a result goal here and there, and it's okay to have that as well. And so people would come in and say, I want to be in the top 7. And I would say, absolutely not. That's not a reasonable goal. I understand where that was coming from, but that just depends on what other people are doing, and not, you're like, the goal should be, for me, if somebody's saying I want to be in the top 7, because what they really mean is I want to be lining up at nationals, is like that I have to be performing at a level that can help the team reach their goals at nationals. But yeah, I mean, it's not that it never happens that somebody comes in and it just doesn't seem like the right fit. I think it's pretty rare, because we normally like really try to figure that out in the recruiting process. But one of the statements we've been using for quite a while, and I think it was NASA at the beginning, is it's responsible to the element, accountable to the mission. And I think that really says a lot about how we do things. And so, responsible to the element for me is everyone here is responsible for taking care of what they need to individually to be successful and get to the postseason in a manner that they can help the team. But that might not be the same way other people in the team do it. So the accountable to the mission piece is, our mission is to be the best team we can in the postseason and have people ready to run at their highest level in November. And so that responsible to the element part might look very different for different people. And for us, that's it's very like trust-based. Somebody might be doing 70% of the mileage you're doing, but for them, it's the right thing. And the team has to trust that that person is doing the right thing and doing what they need to put themselves in the right position. Like mileage is different. Whether people cross train a little bit more is different. So we have a lot of individuality in the training, but with everyone having a common goal on race day. And that's something that I think people sometimes think, oh, when it's very team oriented, it means everyone's doing the exact same thing all the time. And that's definitely not true here. We do things very differently individually to make sure each individual is ready to go at nationals, but with the whole idea of the team goals in mind at the end of it.
A top athlete who's looking to compete at the next level, you look across the top programs, and most of the coaches there are on the newer end within a few years and starting to build out those programs. And I feel like in the NCAA, there's a lot of coaching hopping. I'm not a coach, so I'm not calling anyone out. I'm sure I would do it to some extent. You got to build your way up. But something I admire about you is, you were an athlete at NC State, which we could get into. You were NCAA champion. You're remarkably successful, and then you've been a part of the program like long after your time as an athlete. I think you were on staff in the early 90s, long before I was even alive, and now you're still there today in 2025. And so an athlete who's coming in probably doesn't have to worry about, hey, you're going to jump ship, my freshman year. And also, like, Coach Henes freaking loves this program. I mean, she's been in it and she wore the same uniform that I'm going to be wearing. How much do you think that, like, your testimony there bleeds into the culture of like, hey, our coach is in it with us because she wore the same uniform and she's seen generations of athletes at this point?
Sure. A lot, I think. And again, like you, I don't blame anyone for moving around and doing what's best for them and their family and the situations that they're in. But for my husband, and my husband ran for NC State as well. And we, honestly just love this area. That's why we stayed, and I love the program and raised our children here. And so it is very much so. It's very easy for me to recruit people saying, I believe this is the best place to be, because it's clearly, I do believe that. So yeah, I've always thought it's kind of cool when you watch people be able to go somewhere else and build a program or build it up when it has, stagnated or those types of things. But that kind of happens within my years here. That's also happened. We've had, and I think, some of that is due to, this is a really hard job when you have two like really small children. And my husband was working, he had a job that he had to go to Southeast Asia and Australia and New Zealand for work a lot. And it was super challenging during those years. And so I think maybe I wasn't recruiting at the level I needed to, or there were things that I wasn't able probably to do at the level I'm doing them now. And so that, even within our program, it's kind of like building things back. After there were 2 years that we didn't make it to NCAAs. And then after that, we've just been pretty consistently, I think 13th has been our worst finish over the last 8 or 9 years or something like that. And so, for me in the recruiting process with that, it is very easy to say, like, I believe this is the best place to be. And because, we stayed here. But the other thing that I think is a huge factor in that is the alumni that we have in the area. I mean, Raleigh is a great place to live. So a lot of our alumni stay here. A lot of our Ohioans will end up, and here for for the long term. And you have this whole community, not just of the people on the team right now, but of all of our alumni here that were coached by the same people. And that really makes the alumni network and the family atmosphere. Everybody talks about having a family atmosphere, but we have so many alumni in this area that the first time we won nationals in 2021, there was like a watch party that so many people were at, and all of our alumni. And I think our athletes really feel that they're not just supported by the people here right now, but the people who've been here. And that is something I talk about all the time, is kind of like the program versus team, that we look at this as a program, not just sure, we're very team oriented, but I would like to say we're very program oriented. It's not just the 10 people that will line up at ACCs this year or 7 people at nationals. It's the whole program, because everybody has a role. And it's also, all the people that came before you to kind of lay this groundwork, and all the people that will come after you. And so that's something that we do talk about a lot. And I think that helps the idea of doing something for a purpose bigger than yourself.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I think I was talking to maybe Sam. This was years ago, and I've talked to a lot of your athletes throughout the years, but I remember there was one instance where, and I was reminded of this when you said your worst finish was 13th, and I was thinking through all the stories of NCAAs, and I think it was Sam, and she said it was like the night before someone got a spider bite or something, and it sent the whole team into a spiral. And I've heard of other situations where things happen the day before on the line, or someone gets sick, and it seems your program is always able to overcome that adversity and then laugh about it in hindsight and say, well, we still won. How do you're not going to replicate a spider bite in practice, but how do you replicate some of that adversity for the girls? Because it seemed to happen in the past and they've seemed to overcome it. And I think that's a unique trait that not every team has.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that we do anything purposefully in practice to do that, but I think one of the things we do talk about a lot is that things don't have to be perfect to have the performance that you want or close to what you want. Angelina and I were talking about it in Tokyo. You look around and there's lots of people there with things going on, even if it's slight, so they've missed some training or their flight was canceled or this or that. And you still have to just go compete at the highest level. And you've got to, it's a maturity thing. And so I think that we were lucky. That was 2021 actually when we won. And it was Hannah Steelman had the spider bite, and Kelsey Camille had the flu getting on the plane. Like, she got on the plane with a 102-degree fever, and there was something else that happened. Oh, Caitlin fell in the race. Caitlin Tui fell. Kelsey had the flu. Hannah Steelman had a spider bite. We had a trainer at the time, Tony Sun. He's amazing. He basically was like, well, I've called in her antibiotic. And I'm like, oh, okay, like we'll pick it up in Raleigh. And he's like, oh no, she'll start it the minute she finishes the race, because it was kind of like streaking up her body, and not a good situation. But I think that like we really learned from that one for the next couple of years too, that everything doesn't have to be perfect. I think people feel a lot of pressure going into NCAA cross country. There's nothing like it, right? There's the 250 best people in the country in that sport in one race at the same time. And, if you look at other NCAA championships, maybe golf, but like there's nothing else really like that, right? It's different events. And this is just like everyone together and who's the best on that day. And there can be a lot of stress on that. But I think we just really talk about, if you're prepared, that those things don't really change anything. You just deal with them the best you can and control what you can control. And it doesn't, like, most of these things don't change your fitness. That's our joke all the time. Like, does this change my fitness? And if the answer is no, you're fine. And so I think, we've had a lot of adversity in the 3 times that we won, and a lot the last year for sure. And I think, losing Kelsey in 2023, like a week before, we'd already lost a good number of meets that year. We didn't win Nutty Comb. We weren't at the top of everything. And so that was like a huge blow. But we had people who just really knew what to do in that situation, step up, Sam being one of them, Amaris being the other one in that year. And Amaris hadn't finished a race until that day. And they really just know how to step up when it counts. But part of that is you can't fake wanting to run well for each other. And those teams absolutely, I can't speak for any other team, but I can't imagine any other team wanting to run for each other more than those teams did in those years. And so that helps overcome a lot of adversity.
Talking off of what you were sharing earlier on in your response, I've heard from Coach Milt, the school I'm probably not allowed to talk about on with you. He says at the NCAA meet, good is actually excellent, which I love that framing, where these people have this expectation where they have to do something they've never done before to achieve their goal. And sometimes that might be reality, but rarely are you going to run well when you're that tense and you think it's absolutely all on the line and you have to get it done. And for your team and your program, when you're ranked as well as you are going into the meet, or you've done certain things throughout the season where you have the level of confidence that you can get it done, well, trying to do something brand new and muster up this unreal level of courage you've never done before generally is going to leave you with a worse result than if you just said, okay, what's my job here? What do I know I can do? And then I'm going to follow through on that, because good is actually excellent and everyone around me is going for broke, and it's probably not going to pan out for the vast majority of them.
Yeah, I think people, the one thing I said that year when we lost Kelsey is we're not going to run any differently than if she was here, because you can't go change things at that level and in those races. And I do think we always talk about, you don't have to do anything different than what you've done to get here. Like you said, there are some cases where maybe that's not true. And maybe in 2023, that was a little bit true for that year, at least for some of those people. But for the most part, when you're at NCAAs, if you've gotten there and you're running well, you don't have to do anything different than what you've done. And we really try very hard not to change anything in the lead up, in the setup to NCAA, so that you don't feel like, don't make this bigger than it is. I mean, sure, it's big. These athletes care about this a lot, but one of the things we talk about a lot is also the comparison is a thief of joy, right? And if you're focused on what other people are doing and what other people are doing in training, or how fast somebody else has run going into the meet, you're just focused on all of the wrong things. We work really hard to keep people, whatever season it is, focused on what they're doing and what they need to do to be successful at the end of the year. At one point, well, I guess she did it before I made her, but Grace Hartman actually took TFRs and everything off of her phone during the indoor season 2 seasons ago, because she was so worried about whether she was going to qualify. And we just kept going into these situations where it didn't work. And she just, went by herself and ran whatever she ran to get in, and then scored, and was obviously, should have been there. But people get the times are getting so fast. Everything's getting to such a high level. And if people start looking at that and comparing, they need to, we just talk about comparing yourself to where you were last week, and are you better than you were last week, and focused on the process. Because if you start focusing on these results, or how fast other people in the country are running, or what you think you might need to do, or who's on the other teams, that doesn't work. And I think we've done a really good job over the last few years of just focusing on your teammates, who's around you, making them better, and just running the best race we can, and a race that we're proud of in November. I think some people would have thought we were really disappointed with 8th last year. I think on that day, the way we ran, we were very proud of it. And, that's just sometimes what happens in this sport. Sure, we would have liked to have been in contention to win again, but that's where we were last year. And we had, some fantastic individual performances and people really running for each other. And I think they came off of that with, really ready to go for this year. You're not going to win every year, so we try not to focus on the result of it. We just want to have everybody as ready as possible in the postseason to run their best race.
Which would you say is harder, chasing a national title for the first time, chasing a national title for the first time, or defending it? And can you speak to the differences in energy going into the season, trying to win one knowing you can, versus defending it and knowing you can?
Defending definitely is harder, I think, emotionally for the team going through the season. I mean, they know they can do it because they've done it before. And for us, it was a lot of the same people over those years. So that was helpful because they had the experience of knowing that they could get that done. But all of our women who were here in 2021 to say, that was the best time of my life. Everything was, going after this goal that we hadn't done for so long, and just being part of that. And that team was so close and ran for each other so well. And then I think the ones after that, it was more people would say, oh, that's a relief, not just the excitement of it, but a little bit. Everybody says they want to be the underdog. And I remember in 2023 that someone in the press conference asked a question, would you rather be the favorite or the underdog? And every one of us answered underdog, Mike Smith and Dave Smith and myself, and everybody said that. And I think that's true, but I do think there's something to knowing that you've been there, you've done it, and that you can handle that situation, because again, it is a very high stakes situation, the NCAA cross particularly. I mean, track and field for sure. Track and field just gets a little bit more individual, and you kind of know whether you can handle it individually yourself. But it is something that can be learned too. I mean, again, Grace is probably a great example of that. Her early NCAAs were good, but not the level she wanted to run at. And so I think you can definitely learn that as you go through. It's not, some people just have it, and that is also true, but it is something that can be learned by training with really high level people, putting yourself in that situation. We never really want to go to the well in training, but there's a couple different workouts a year where we will make it a little bit stressful so that they, not chaotic necessarily, but there is some chaos at nationals. And so just where it might get a little difficult and they have to work together to do it. And so we will put people in those positions a few times during the year so that they feel prepared when they're there.
At what point in a NCAA cross country race do you know that your team's going to win? And what's that process looked like over the years? I feel like some years it's like you don't know until it's announced, and others you might know earlier.
For me, like not till like the last, K of a race. Even in 2021, I was standing with Joe Franklin, and he's like, "Congratulations," and I'm like, "It's not over yet." He's like, "It was over a little while ago." But yeah, I mean, I think, again, we do really, really focus on the process. So I try not to, we really try not to like super analyze other teams' rosters or what they can do, because I think that just gets you really bogged down in, again, like somebody feeling like they need to do something more than what they need to do. And so we really try not to do that. And there were some of those issues really going into each one of the championships. And so I knew all 3 of those years that we had a very good team that certainly could contend for a national title, but you can't really know what other people have or what they're going to do until you get to that point.
From my understanding of studying and talking to the top coaches and athletes in the NCAA, and if you disagree, please voice it here. It seems most training is 90% similar. I don't know what number to put on, but very similar. Everyone has their long runs and their thresholds and their easy runs and doubles, and people are generally doing very, very, very similar stuff. So for you, what's the differentiator between 1 and 10 and 10 and 20, and why, from your perspective as someone who's been so successful and been that team who's number 1, like what separates you guys if you're doing very similar workouts to everyone else? Is it culture? Is it belief? Is it something else?
I think culture and belief are big. I think consistency is the big thing too. The workouts are, like you said, 90% similar, really. There's no magic workout. There's no magic formula. But the magic formula to me is being able to do at least 90% of those during a year for the individuals and know that they're prepared. So we, a lot of focus on preventing problems before they would happen. And that's where I think we would say, like, we don't go to the well. We try not to do that in workouts very often, because I think the main thing is to have those, if you have athletes at that level that have done most of the training, you need to have them on the line, knowing that they're prepared, knowing they've put in everything that they can and ready to go on that day. So I think consistency is big. I think, again, the level in the NCAA is getting so high that it kind of pushes people to maybe take chances in their training, because they're looking at people and that's where the comparison is a thief of joy thing comes in too. Like, oh, now there's people in the NCAA that, a couple of years ago, breaking 15 minutes was like, nobody was doing it. And now it's like, oh, there's probably, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 people that can do it. And so if you're starting to look at like, oh, I want to be in contention to win a title and I have to do these things, you can't skip steps. And so I think that's, people try to do that and lose the consistency of their training. And that's, I think, one of my biggest challenges right now. We have these women, so many women at a particularly high level, 2 top 10 finishers returning, plus Angelina and Sadie, and just, Bethany Mahalik, who was, second and third at NXN and making these big jumps, like is having these athletes not push too hard or not try to take too many chances. It's like, you do have to train hard. And I want, no one's shying away from that. It's not like you're going to run these marks or be a contender by doing everything easy. I'm certainly not saying that, but I think that, taking too many risks or too many chances because there's other people running at a high level is the wrong thing to do. So I think being able to put your head down and do that training consistently is what makes the difference at nationals.
Hypothetically, if you were to, walk through the locker room and no one knew you were there, what are things you would ideally hope to hear that you would hear and you'd think in your coaching brain, okay, the girls are thinking the right thoughts. We were on a good trajectory.
Yeah. I want to hear people really supporting each other, not just at practice and like while I'm there and those types of things, right? I think that this, again, sport is hard. The adjustment to it is hard. So I really want to hear our upperclassmen supporting the newer people and helping them reach the level that they've reached. And so that's something that, I think we do have. I think I would hear that in the locker room. And that's something that makes me really happy when I see one of our upperclassmen, go out of their way to go talk to one of the freshmen that's struggling and tell them it's going to be fine, or this is how I can help you, that type of thing.
Something that I'm sure a lot of people know because it's been talked about a lot, but is the fact that you were an NCAA champion 1991, and then your daughter, Ellie, NCAA champion in 2021, 30 years apart. Does that in your list of best experiences, most fond memories, where does that match up with winning NCAA team titles or three-peating? Where's your rankings list of that? And whose did you appreciate more, her winning or you winning?
Her winning,
Okay.
Between hers and mine, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, that was cool. We had another athlete in that race too, so it wasn't super, just focused. Savannah Shaw was also in that race, and so I didn't have just one athlete I was coaching there, but I thought she had a really good chance to win. She was running fast and was closing well, and so those are the two things you need to have, in an NCAA championship going in. So it was really cool that it was in the same stadium, and getting to watch that. So that was a very cool moment on the track. I would say her whole goal here was to win a team title in cross. So the fact that they did it the year after she graduated was sad for her, but she was super happy for the team. So yeah, there's kind of nothing like the first one. So that 2021, team title was huge, and those women had just bought in so hard and were drawing other people to the program, and that was the way that group ran together. Was, I think our spread was, I don't know, it was under 20 seconds, and that was really impressive. And so that was a really cool moment. I do think 2023 was an amazing moment in a different way. There were so many not great things that happened that day and that week going into it, but just stepping back and being able to see those athletes who either came back for a fifth year or fought so hard to have the team at that level. 1 point and it seems a lot different, right? Which isn't true, because when you're focused on process, if we'd lost by a point, we still would have had a great day. And I hate that it feels so different. 1 point makes people feel so differently about how things happened. But I think they would have been good with, or felt pretty good about second as well that day. But the fact that those women who had invested so much into the program and getting back to the level were able to step away with another title was, again, not in the moment fantastic feeling, because we had lots of kind of bad things going on, but looking back and seeing them be that group that had put so much into it, be able to walk away with another title was also really special.
I know how high achievers operate, and one of those key qualities is they a lot of times struggle to, one, give themselves their flowers, and two, they very quickly move on to the next thing. How quickly were you thinking of the second title or the next season or track season after that first title? And do you personally struggle with the ability to breathe and say, I just did that? I need to have a full night of rest for the first time in a few months and not think about running tomorrow.
Yeah, as coaches, it's tough because we tell the athletes, go celebrate it. Don't think about next year at all, but we're immediately thinking about next year as coaches. And so we might not be modeling the best thing for the athletes sometimes, but again, not necessarily thinking about the next title, but just thinking about how the next year will play out and what the personnel is going to look like, and what, how we want to build the roster or help add to the roster and those kinds of things. So you're always thinking about that. But I do think something our women have gotten a lot better at recently is celebrating the wins. We talk about that a lot, because it is really easy for, Grace Hartman to walk away from NCAA's bummed because she really thought she could win the 10. And it's not like I said, think about where you were a year ago. And we've got, and so we really try to focus on the gratitude piece of it, being grateful for the steps that you've made. And, for when you win a title, there's so many people in there that have made these huge steps. And so we really try to focus on being grateful for that going into the race and after the race. But this sport doesn't give you a lot of time for it because, pretty much you're in Boston 10 days later trying to reach your indoor mark, which is getting faster and faster every year. So, and again, I hate that about the college part of this, because it just seems like they're not getting enough of a break. And I really, really try to give our high level women as much of a break as possible. US nationals being late is not ideal for that with going into cross country, but we're doing the best we can to make sure that we're not over racing or over stressing.
If you were to advise a up and coming coach, or if at the end of your career you were to advise your present self or past self, just your future version of yourself coming back, what are some like key takeaways or practices that you would recommend a coach has to stay sane? I mean, that sounds funny, but it is true. Like, how do you, again, you're in the weeds with your athletes in cross country, and then 10 days later, yes, you're in Boston, and you're probably on Christmas Day, maybe thinking about an athlete's workout or someone's dealing with a struggle, and then you have indoor and the stress of that, and then outdoor, and then, well, guess what? You go to Tokyo, and then, all over again. And I imagine it's absolutely exhausting, and some days you don't know how you're going to get through it. So if you were to, get coffee with yourself 3 years ago or advise an up and coming coach, what are some practices that have helped you stay sane and be able to do everything in a seemingly healthy way?
Focusing on the process, I think, would be the biggest one. When you're younger, I mean, even when you're older too, let's face it, but everything seems to be about results at times, And so I think focusing on the process and how you want people to respond to each other and react, and not just focusing on the results. And then staying in the moment as much as possible. Like you said, instead of just looking ahead to the next thing right away, as just staying in the moment, focusing on the process. And, my family and I, we use December in a huge way for vacations and those types of things. And right after US nationals as well, is to get away from it for a period of time. I think it makes you much more effective if you can actually take some time away. I mean, the women are really good when I do something like that, of like really, really trying not to call or not to text or those types of things. It doesn't always work out that way, but very much so. Those would be my three biggest things, I think. Focus on the process, not the results early on. Stay in the moment. Don't always be thinking ahead to the next thing, and take time for yourself and your family away from the sport at times.
The person who's bringing together this series where I'm talking to a lot of coaches is Final Surge. I know you yourself use Final Surge. Can you speak to your first introduction to the app, and then just how you use it in your day-to-day with your athletes and with your team, and the benefit it's brought you?
Yeah, it's very interesting how differently the athletes on the team use it. It's not, we don't require notes or anything. We don't want them just uploading their watch, because I don't want to go through and try to figure out, like, they have to put what the workout was and splits and stuff. But I'll get, paragraphs from some athletes, and not even a pace on things from some athletes. But I think that goes back to the comparison as a thief of joy. We never use it in a way where people on the team can see other people's stuff. It's something that has really worked well for me. I am a paper person at times, and so I do keep paper calendars and all those things. But I think particularly going back on the app and looking at somebody who ran really well might have had like a little issue, and did they do something different? And if you're just looking at this calendar and not being able to go back to each person individually, really, it's really easy to do on there. So for instance, the year Caitlin Tui won cross in 2022, she had tweaked her hamstring at regionals. And so what she did in the last workout leading in was actually a little different than what she normally would have done. It's really cool for me to be able to use that, see it, and be like, oh, wait, we did do this slightly differently. Maybe that works better for her, and we should implement it like the next kind of time. So it's really, I have years and years on there now, and it's really nice to be able to go back and say, oh, this person really reminds me of like my daughter or Erica or something like that, and like look at what they did leading into nationals, that type of thing.
Looking ahead to the future, or just reflecting on your past, How do you define success personally?
Well, coaching wise, I would say I define it as if I can do what I'm asking them to do and not focus all on the results and just feel like we can have athletes who are developing as people. I think that's really important, not just the athletic side. Are they good students? Are they good people? And hopefully that's happening, that I can help people do that and be successful in life. But also helping them reach their goals, as athletes as well. And so being able to put them in a position to reach the goals that they have when they get here, then I feel like that's success on my part.
Final serious question I have for you. What advice would you give to an athlete listening who wants to run or be in a position to run for a program like NC State one day? What encouragement would you give to them in terms of, keep going at it? And I don't know, any words you'd have for someone listening who wants to be great at the sport of running, is trying their best, but wants some encouragement along the way?
Yeah, I would say the whole, like, don't try to skip steps. Don't try to, again, just like it's happening at the NCAA level, it's happening at the high school level. And don't do things just to try to get the attention of a college coach, that kind of, I see that. And I think like what we're looking for, and I think what serves people best at this level is becoming well-rounded, run that relay. If you're on a team and you want to run the 4x8, might you be a little bit tired for the 16? Maybe. But if that's something you feel strongly about and you want to do, don't let people talk you out of doing that. Don't let people, for me, one of the things for my daughter, her team was always pretty good. They made it to NXN as a team once, and she went as an individual the other 2 years. The team aspect of that was huge. And, my husband and I had both run Foot Locker, and people were kind of like, why isn't she running Foot Locker? Why does she want to go to San Diego? And it was because she wasn't going to not give her team a chance to be at nationals. And I think that's true. That's something that we look at in the high school. Not everyone has that opportunity, for sure. Like, not everyone has a team where they can do those types of things. But for me, when you can be team oriented and make it about that, that's a big deal. But that, like, again, being well-rounded, taking the time to do things that might not be your strength or the easiest thing to do, are important. It will make you better in the long term. And so I guess my advice would be focus on the long term. If that's your goal, if you want to have like this long college career, then focus on that and take the right steps and do the right things, not to put yourself in a position where maybe you're doing something amazing as a sophomore, but then you're hurt the next year or something like that. Is take the time, take the steps, and do all the little things right. Like, learning to do that early on is important. I mean, I think high schoolers should relax and have fun, but if you're going to train at a high level, you do need to, this is my soapbox, but high schoolers do not sleep enough. They're taking AP courses. They're getting 5 hours of sleep. That's how you're going to get hurt and sick and those types of things. So try your best to, get a lot of sleep, eat right, hydrate, all those things so that you can train at a high level. But also, I mean, another just piece of advice I would give to people is, there's a lot going on for college coaches and in the recruiting process, and there's transfer portal, international recruiting, all these things. Reach out to people that you're really interested in. I think that's important because it does make a difference. It's like, sure, we're going to call the best kids and we're going to try to do those things, but it makes a difference to college coaches to know, like, hey, this is a place I'm super interested in, and I would really want to take a look. I mean, I think that is an important thing to do. Don't be afraid to do that, would be my advice on that as well.
I love it. Thanks for the wisdom. I'm sure a lot of people will be blessed by it. Wrapping this conversation up, you said you grew up in Ohio, so I got to ask, favorite state meet memories, and where'd they even host the state meet back in the day if you ran high school in Ohio?
Scioto Downs racetrack was cross country.
Okay.
So it came back onto the horse track at the end. And so I won my first.
A mess.
Yeah, it was a mess. I won my first state title as a sophomore there, and I wasn't supposed to win. I was like, wait, is there no one? Like, I didn't think I was going to get to the finish line first, and I did. But actually, my senior year, Bob Kennedy and I both won the 1600 in in Stadium the same year. So yeah, that was pretty.
He still
cool.
owns the record.
Yeah, the fans were
crazy.
The Ohio fans love their state track and field meet. I mean, there were people betting in the stands, and that state meet was amazing. Just the level. I know I'm forgetting a lot of other people that were there, but I remember watching Bob win, I think before me, and then it was an amazing state meet, and Ohio really knows what to do. So we'll keep going back there and recruiting.
I love it. I love it. Final question for you. The question I ask every guest on every single episode. Don't ask me why. I started it years ago and it hasn't left. So the question is, if you had Gordon Ramsay coming over to your house for dinner, what would you choose to make for him?
I am not much of a cook. I have to admit. I don't know. The only thing I think I make really well is a really good chicken parm. So I guess that.
Chicken parm. Coach Henes, thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom, and congratulations on all the success. And from the athletes I've gotten to spoke to, they all speak to the impact you've had on them. So thank you for the ways that you've impacted the individuals so many people look up to in the sport and all the ripples you've created. And it was a privilege to sit down with you today.
Thank you.